Okay, so let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Intro to Patent session, which is part of the 2021 First California Workshop Series, Product Development and Design Thinking. I'm Teresa Bateman with First in the Greater San Francisco, Monterey Bay areas, and excited to be here with you. And I'm also excited to share with you some background about the KLA Foundation. And so we're going to kick off the session with just a few minutes intro. So let me get started with a quick video here.
Thank you for taking care of our community.
Muchas gracias a todos los empleados de KLA Inventors.
It's important to give back to our community, the people who built our country.
The reason I give because I see this as an opportunity to build an inclusive and stigma-free community for people with mental health conditions.
我当 KLA 志工，因为我想分享温暖。
This immense global impact is due to the hard work and generosity of the KLA Foundation. And here to share additional information on the Foundation's work is Nicole Speciale.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Speciale, and I'm the marketing manager at the KLA Foundation. It's really exciting to spend a little time with you today. So just a little background on myself. I actually am a First alum about 10 years ago now. I was at Prospect High School on the Gearheads team, and I was a mechanical and electrical assistant. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology from Santa Clara University. And then after working several jobs, ended up at the KLA Foundation, and I've been here for a little over 2 years now. And I help manage the First Robotics program and the Kiva microlending program. Next slide. And so a little bit of an overview for the KLA Foundation. We say that we like to serve as an activator. So we like to connect charitable organizations with our employees so that we can make a positive and lasting impact. And we're committed to standing in solidarity with our communities. And that means that we need to really listen to their needs and what they're telling us that we need to address in the community and address these structural inequities through strategic partnerships. So our three main pillars are education with an emphasis on STEM, wellness, and community. And then you can read a little bit about our mission statement on the right. So we believe that everyone should have an equal opportunity to achieve. We believe that differences of experience and diversity of thought add value to the world. We believe that empathy is a force that can change the world for good, and that we must listen and learn from the lived experiences of others. No act of kindness is too small, and that we are stronger when we come together. Next slide, please. And just a little bit of an overview about why we love funding robotics programs. We think that robotics is an amazing opportunity to introduce our youth to the power of STEM. So KLA's technology relies heavily on robotics, and it's integrated into our machines. Robotics helps students develop soft skills that are transferable to future careers in tech. So this can be collaboration, project management, communication, marketing, and so on. There are endless soft skills that robotics helps students achieve. And we have an employee grant program for robotics at KLA. So we emphasize that our mentors are active with their teams in order to receive funding. So this ensures that we're working as strategically as possible with teams so that we can have that positive and lasting impact. And finally, we absolutely love sponsoring our FIRST teams. We love the FIRST robotics competition. It's such a fun way for KLA to engage with the community. So we've enjoyed doing this over the past several years and look forward to many more years to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and the Kla Foundation for your partnership and support in our community. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Now for the main event, please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Morris, Director of Intellectual Property Law at KLA.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm happy to be here. And thanks, Nicole, for that intro. I've been very involved in quite a few of the things that Nicole does with Kla Foundation, and certainly the FIRST Robotics is one of my favorites. So thanks so much. I'm about to share my screen, and it seems like I have to share before I get into presentation mode. So just give me one moment. All right, can you all see just my presentation version of things?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna minimize so I can't see you guys, just so I can see my screen. Okay, so yeah, I'm the Director of Intellectual Property Law at KLA, which means that most of my day is spent working on the patent portfolio. We have a large international patent portfolio, but today I'm gonna talk really about how US patents work. Getting started with that, first I just wanted to tell you kind of how I became a patent attorney, in case that's interesting to anybody as a career choice. So in high school, I had never heard of FIRST, and I don't think we had a robotics team, but I was very involved in math and science and AP classes and such. But I was also very interested in English and in drama and in leadership. I liked working at camp, teaching kids things. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I went to college, but I went to Purdue University and decided I'd at least start out in their engineering program because that was sort of the hardest to get into. And then I figured I could switch into something else if I didn't like it. But once I got into engineering, I found that it was very interesting and that I really enjoyed it. And while I was there, I had a seminar about what you could do with a engineering degree, and somebody came and talked about patent law. And what that person said is, well, if you like technology, but you also like to teach and you like to write or you like to explain technology to other people, then patent law might be a good choice for you. And that was a good fit for me. I was always the person like writing the lab reports and stuff like that. So it seemed like a good fit. So I kind of had it in the back of my mind. I graduated from Purdue in mechanical engineering, and I got married and I moved out to California, and I went to law school. So here's a picture of me and my husband on our snowmobile while I was in law school. And I specifically chose a law school that was very known for intellectual property law, and that was Santa Clara University right here in the Bay Area. So patents, what is a patent? Well, here's a little gold seal patent picture image on the right. If you get a patent, it looks like that. It means that you have invented something that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office thinks is worthy of being patented, and they send you this gold seal document, and you get to have that patent for 20 years. Utility patents are good for 20 years. Some people like to call them a limited term monopoly, because essentially what that means is when you get a patent, what you're doing is you're trading with the government. You're saying, okay, government, I will write up my idea in such a way that other people could understand it, and it will have, you know, descriptions and figures and explanations, so that anybody can do this later. And the government says, okay, thanks for writing that up. And because you did that, we will let you have a patent and have exclusive rights on that idea for 20 years. So that's why sometimes people call it a limited term monopoly. It's a deal you make with the government, and the government likes it because they think it advances the technology and science faster by people disclosing and not holding things secretly just for themselves. So there's all sorts of things that can be patented, but I have a survey question for you with a couple of choices. So if you could just take a look at the survey, which of these things do you think have been patented? Well, it's really interesting to watch this in real time. Lots of people like the zipper. Lots of people like the light bulb. The electric guitar is getting good votes too. So most people have voted. I'll give you like one more second. Got 23 out of 26 people voting. All right. So the zipper has won with 74%, followed by light bulb and electric guitar. Thanks so much. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what they are in just another slide or two. Can you remove that poll? Do I need to close it on my end? Let me see if I can close it. Okay. All right, so what is a patent? Well, this is the official legal description of how patents, what a patent is. It's whoever invents or discovers any new and useful process, machine, manufacture, or composition of matter, or any new and useful improvement on any of those things may obtain a patent. So one thing I want to point out here is how new and useful is new and useful. So an example I remember learning when I first learned about patents was, let's say you cook up something in your lab and you're not sure what it's good for, or you're hoping it's good for something, but you haven't quite done enough testing. One example somebody used this, well, just take it outside and pour it on the grass. And if the grass dies, then you can say it's a plant killer. And if the grass grows better, you can say it's a fertilizer. And either of those things would be useful enough to qualify for the useful category of patenting. So it's not too high of a bar from usefulness. Where we really get into it is sort of on the newness, but it's a thing or a chemical or even a way of doing something. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few slides. So this is a patent to the light bulb. So those of you that chose light bulb, you're correct. Perhaps this is, some people think this is one of the most famous patents of all time. This patent was by Thomas Edison. And there we went to the next slide. Let's give it things away. And he called this the electric lamp. And this was patented in 1880. So quite a long time ago. It's definitely in the public domain now. This is a patent to the zipper. So those of you that selected zipper, you are also right. And it was patented in 1917. And at the time that they applied for the patent, the name that they gave this was the separatable fastener. And I think our lives have all been improved by zippers. That's a pretty clever invention, and it's sort of interesting, I think, to look at this particular picture and say, yeah, zippers are pretty complicated if you think about it. It's a pretty neat idea. And here is the electric guitar. Mr. Fender, C.L. Fender, Clarence L. Fender here, the inventor. This patent was granted in 1951. It's pretty cool too. So you're all right. All three of those things were patents. So whatever you chose was the correct answer. So who gives out patents? The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office gives out the patents in our country. Around the world, other patent and trademark offices give out patents in other countries. Survey question number 2, where do you think the patent office is located? You want to pull up that survey, we'll take a look at it. Yeah, is it somewhere near Washington, D.C.? Is it around that area? Or is it in Silicon Valley? Or maybe it's in Detroit. Some people think it's in Detroit. Some people think it's in Silicon Valley. Seems like a lot of people think it's in D.C. DC does seem to be winning, but not everybody. Okay, we can go ahead and close this poll too. DC won. You guys are right, and this is also sort of another trick question. So here, if I can get it, coming up as my next click. Why does it do this? There is the picture of the Patent and Trademark Office in Washington, D.C., or outside of Washington, D.C. It's in Virginia, technically. But the Patent and Trademark Office has, in the past about 10 years, made a variety of other satellite offices around the country where patent attorneys work and do their job and grant patents. And one of those is in Detroit, and another one of those is actually right in our backyard here in Silicon Valley. It's right downtown San Jose, near the state building down there. So it's actually something that you and your teams could do if you're near the Bay Area. You could probably go and visit there once we're all allowed to start doing stuff when COVID dies down a bit. So all of those answers were correct. Now, I'm going to explain patents to you in the context of an Uncrustables sandwich. So if we were doing this in person, I would be handing out an Uncrustable to you right now to take a look at, to snack on, and to open up and look at the different parts of an Uncrustable, because we're going to go through the patent that Smucker's obtained to get an Uncrustable sandwich. But since we can't do that in person, I have a little video for you that I can hopefully play here. I don't think you'll hear the sound, which is fine, but I do want to just show it to you. So what is an Uncrustable sandwich, you say? It's the frozen, pre-packed, packaged food that's delicious and easily packable, super soft and super snackable, always lovable every day. So an Uncrustable, if you haven't had one before, is essentially a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that is pre-packaged and kind of smushed together into this little puck, and it's easy to take with you and take places. Spoiler alert, Smucker's was able to get a patent on an Uncrustable sandwich, and I'm going to kind of talk through what that is. But just out of curiosity, survey question number 3, have you ever eaten an Uncrustable sandwich? Nice split here. Got lots of yes yums, not to know yucks, and a couple of hadn't heard of it. Yeah, that's why I want to make sure I showed you the video, just in case. Yep, just wanted to make sure that you had a little taste of what it might be, so that when we go through this patent, it makes some sense. Thank you. We can exit that poll. I will move on to my next slide. So I'm going to talk to you about the patent of the Uncrustable, and Teresa's going to drop into the chat feature a link for the Uncrustable Patent. If you were with me in person, I would be handing them out, and I'm going to be walking through the pieces of it. But it essentially, starts with the cover page and flips on through. There's a variety of images for some machines on kind of how to make one. There's some images on what the sandwich itself looks like. I'm going to talk through those in a little more detail. And then there's the written description, and at the very end there's the claims. So we're going to spend some time talking about claims because claims are super important to a patent. First, we're going to start at the beginning. So the first thing you need for a submission requirement is you need a title. So if you're looking at your patent, or you're pulling up on your side screen there, this patent is called the sealed crustless sandwich. That element that's highlighted there. So that's the first thing you need for a patent. The next thing you need to list the inventors. So in this case, it was Mr. Kretschmann and Mr. Giske. One thing that I think is sort of interesting is the first named inventor does get their name put at the top of the patent, right under here, right under next to U.S. States Patent. But that does not make any legal difference to the patent office whose name is first. It doesn't give the first named inventor any more rights, but they do get their name bigger. So some people find that important and fight about who should be the first named inventor when I'm dealing with patents in my company. The next thing you need to do is you need to tell the patent office what kinds of things existed prior to you filing a patent. That's one of the requirements to getting a patent. And then the patent office will do their own search and see if they see anything that seems kind of similar to. But in this case, there are several patents that were quite close. And that had come earlier, and there's also some prior art can be anything, so it can also be books or such. So in this case, there's a book called The 50 Great Sandwiches that's considered references cited prior art, and all these patents are sort of interesting. I did look up one just yesterday, and this very first one on the list is a sandwich making device. I took a look at it, and it does seem to sort of smush a sandwich. It's slightly similar to the Uncrustable. So those were all things that the patent office was aware of when they gave this patent out. So then there is the description, and one part of the description is the abstract. So this is like a 1-paragraph description of what the invention is, and it's always on the front page so that somebody that's just flipping through the patent can get a pretty good idea of what the patent's about just in 1 paragraph. And then all the rest of this part is also considered description. So there's the background section where you talk about what things you already know existed prior to your invention. And then there's a quick summary of what the invention is. It's somewhat similar to the abstract, but a little bit more detailed. There's also a place where you call out every single drawing that's in there and talk a little bit about, what view it is and what's in there. And then there's the detailed description, which is really kind of the meat of the application, where you go into specific detail for several pages and describe what your invention is. And then going along with that description is the figures. Here are just a couple of figures that we're going to spend some time on today because they become relevant to the claims. So as you can see in these figures, it points out very specific parts of the figure with reference numbers. And if you went back and looked in the application, these numbers would be explained. So in this case, there's the bread portion number 20. And there is a lower filling 30A and an upper filling 30B and a center filling in this image, which is number 32. And then we have these edges are specifically crimped, and there's some reference numerals pointing that out. And then finally, there's the claims. So the claims are really the heart of the invention. And a claim is a 1-sentence description of what the invention is. And we're going to spend some more time on claims in just a second. So in order to get a patent, you have to prove some things, and really what you're usually arguing most about are that these things exist in your claims. So the requirements to receive a patent, there's 3 of them. First, there's utility. So it has to be useful and solve the problem that it was designed for. As I told you earlier, that's not necessarily a high bar. You can think back to the killing or helping grass grow as a utility example. The next is novelty. This means that the invention has to be, it cannot be, I guess would be a better way to say it, cannot be exactly the same as something that has already been done in the past. And typically that's a prior patent, although it could be a description of something in another publication as well. If it's identical to something else that's been out there, then it is not novel. And the third is non-obvious. So obviousness is really where patent attorneys and the patent office, the patent examiners spend a lot of time trying to figure out is something obvious or not, because what does it mean to be obvious? It means that essentially if 2 or more patents or ideas can be combined to get everything that's in your invention, then the patent examiner will say that it's obvious. So the legal description here, a patent for a claimed invention may not be obtained if the differences between the claimed invention, so that's the invention it claims, and the prior art are such that the claimed invention would have been obvious to a person having ordinary skill in the art. And so if your patent is to something very technical, very advanced, then a person having skill in the art might be, somebody with a PhD in chemistry or something. If your patent is fairly obvious, as is probably the case in the one we're talking about today, then it's a fairly ordinary person. So that's something we argue about too. But usually we spend a fair amount of time patent prosecution. The most of the time is spent arguing with the patent office and the patent attorney about what exactly should be in the claim to make it different enough from a couple of references to be considered prior art, not to be considered different, not obvious over the prior art. So here's a real property metaphor to that idea. So a claim essentially puts a fence around your invention and protects it without getting into anybody else's yard, any prior art that already exists. So you want that fence to encompass as much as possible. If you made it so small that it didn't encompass that little tree in the bottom corner, then you'd be kind of leaving stuff on the table that you probably really wanted. And that does sometimes happen. People talk about it in the description of the specification, they describe things more broadly, but then what they end up claiming is something smaller. And then that's the only part that the fence is really around. The other part has been sort of given to the public already because it's not claimed. So there's a nice little fence there. This, of course, is a terrible fence. It doesn't include the little yellow tree, and it includes the green tree. And this is a, just a visualization of a bad claim. Okay, so now we're going to look specifically at the claim that Smucker's originally filed when they asked for a patent on their Uncrustable sandwich. And I'm going to walk through the pieces of this a little bit of detail here. So they said that they wanted a sealed crustless sandwich, which comprises, and by the way, just back up a minute, this is a 1-sentence description. It looks like a paragraph, but if you look at it really closely, we use indentations and semicolons to break out the different pieces, but it is one very complicated sentence, and that's because that's the requirements of the Patent Office. You have to have a 1-sentence description of your invention. So a sealed crustless sandwich comprising a first layer having a perimeter surface coplanar to a contact surface. Okay, you got your first layer. At least one filling of an edible food that's juxtaposed to that contact surface. So some filling kind of underneath. And a second layer juxtaposed to said at least one filling opposite said first layer. In this case, said, this is a term patent attorneys use all the time. It just really means the, but it's describing things more specifically. Where said second layer includes a second perimeter surface similar to said first perimeter surface. So that's saying the top and bottom layers are have approximately the same perimeter, and they are juxtaposed to that edible food filling in the middle. And then at the end, an edge directly between the first perimeter and the second perimeter for sealing the at least said one filling between the layers, right? So you got your top layer, you got your filling, you got your second layer, they're about the same size, and you got your edge sealing everything together. So pretty good claim, I'd say. But what did the patent office say? The patent office said, well, that looks kind of cool. I think you've got something kind of neat there, but what about ravioli? Let's look back at this claim. We got a first layer. Yeah, we got some filling. Definitely. We got a second layer and we have an edge. Shoot. Yeah, this does kind of look like ravioli. Okay. Oh, not to be outdone, the patent attorney will make some changes to try to describe something. There's something different between an Uncrustable sandwich and a piece of ravioli. And the goal is to describe that in as little detail as is necessary to kind of get over that piece of prior art. So at least this particular ravioli, the piece that the patent attorney ended up adding was the edges crimped. See, this ravioli, there's no crimped edge. It's just kind of a flat, you know, smush. But it's not crimped, right? You know, look at my sandwich here. I got a nice little crimping along here on my sandwich. Okay, crimped edge. Is that enough? Is that enough? They asked the patent examiner. He went back, thought about it for 3 months, gave them a new rejection. He said, nope. You take ravioli and you add pie. Pie has a crimped edge. Now it's obvious. So back when we only had the 101, the ravioli rejection, that would have been a 102 rejection. But now that we have the prior art, that's 103. So it's obvious, obviousness rejection. They're combining these two things. Okay, crimped edge plus the top bottom surface with the food in the middle. I mean, and sometimes pies even have all of that, right? Bottom surface pies have that. But maybe they aren't quite the same size, which we saw was in the claim. So, okay, so pie plus ravioli, is that an uncrustable sandwich? There must be some difference. What could it be? The patent attorney said, how about bread? Okay, you don't make pies out of bread. You don't make ravioli out of bread. An uncrustable sandwich is bread. The first layer is a bread layer. There's some food. The second layer is a bread layer. And you got the crimped edge. All right, now we've got it. Now we've got it. And the patent examiner said, what about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? If you looked at a peanut butter jelly sandwich and you looked at ravioli and you looked at a pie, one of ordinary skill in the art would think to combine these things and get an uncrustable sandwich. Well, shoot. What do we do now? Well, the final thing that the patent examiner did to get this claim through the patent office and get the patent is they added this green section at the bottom, where in the crust portion of the bread layer, the first bread layer and the second bread layer has been removed. And once they added that, along with the crimped edge and the bread, the patent office gave them their patent. So in the real property metaphor here, we have now a nice little fence around the invention, and they got their gold seal patent. Hooray, happy day. So they also got some dependent claims. So if you're looking at an example, or you're flipping through the patent later, you'll see that claim 1 is independent. It's all by itself. It's a numbered paragraph, and it just relies on itself. But then there are some dependent claims. Claim 2, for instance, says the sealed crustless sandwich of claim 1, and then it adds some details. And this is just, you know, adding some more specificity to the invention, and they're kind of more like fallback positions, but they can also be very useful and in describing things. So the one here that I think 2 and 3 are meh. Okay, so they have where the crimped edge includes a plurality of spaced apart depressions. Okay, for increasing the bond. So that's, you know, kind of very specific little divots. And wherein the crimped edge is a finite distance from the filling, so that there's a good bond. So you can see mine here. You can kind of see the peanut butter and the jelly are a little bit separated from the edge so that the bread smushes together nicely. and creates that bond. The fourth claim I think is actually really cool, and they actually wrote another independent claim specifically on this idea, and that's claim 9. I don't have it in my slide deck, but specifically what they're saying in this case, and this is true if you had your own sandwich, you could really look at this, but there's actually 3 layers of filling in an Uncrustable sandwich. There's a first filling of peanut butter. There's a second filling of jelly, and there's a third filling that's also peanut butter. And as they explained in this wherein clause here, it says wherein the second filling is completely surrounded by the first and third filling for preventing said second filling from engaging with the first bread layer and the second bread layer. In other words, if we put peanut butter on the top and the bottom and we smush jelly in the middle, the jelly won't make the sandwich soggy. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that actually is an interesting innovation. I should do it for my own kids when I make them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches so they don't get so soggy. So those are some of the claims that this patent made. So they have their patent, they have their gold seal, they can have it for 20 years. Now, what can they do with this patent? Survey question for you. What does the patent give you the right to practice your invention once you get it? If you could pull up that survey for everybody, can let people answer that. Does a patent give you the right to practice your invention? In other words, once you have it, can you do it? Interesting. We had a whole lot of yeses right away. Now people aren't sure. About 70-30 split here. All right, thanks. We can go ahead and close that. Yeah, we got just about 2/3 say yes and 1/3 says no. Well, I think this is a really interesting point, and I hope that this, if you take anything away from this patent class today, I hope it is this. And that is, I can go next. A patent is a grant from the US government that confers you the right to exclude others from making your invention, using your invention, selling your invention, offering your invention for sale, or reporting the invention. But it does not necessarily give you the right to do anything. It only gives you the right to keep others from doing your thing. So I'll give you an example of this, because I think lots of people think, well, if I get a patent, then I can do it, right? I have this idea for my company. I want to get a patent, so then I can do it. Once I have my gold seal, I can do it. Well, not necessarily. Let's say that you got a patent for the first time. You were so clever. You came up with the idea of making a chair that has 4 legs. And you described it, and you say how cool it is that it has 4 legs, that it makes it really solid and easy to move around, and etc. If there was someone that had a patent that was still good, that hadn't expired, that was a patent for a 3-legged chair, then that person holding the 3-legged chair patent could keep you from making, using, selling, or offering for sale a chair with 3 legs, which your 4-legged chair is a chair with 3 legs. You just happen to have another leg, which is not critical, depending on how they'd written the claim. So it is definitely possible that you cannot make, use, sell, or offer for sale your really cool 4-legged chair because the 3-legged chair patent owner is keeping you from doing that. So having a patent does not give you the right to practice it. It just gives you the right to exclude other people from practicing it. And by the way, excluding other people from practicing it means suing them to get them to stop, usually. That's often what it means. And lawsuits are really expensive. So you might not want to get a patent unless you are a big enough entity, like a company, that can actually enforce your patent in the court of law. So I personally think that patents are typically best left to companies, and that it's hard for individuals to actually make use of their patent, because it's actually really hard to exclude people from doing your invention. So we're going to look at that in the context of the Uncrustable sandwich again. We're going to look at that from the context of something called the cut and seal, which is a little device. If we were in person, I would show you how it works, but it's essentially for making a little sandwich. And I'm going to play this video, and I don't know if the sound will come through, and if it does or not, it doesn't really matter. Let's take a look. This is the cut and seal by Pampered Chef demonstration. So I see 2 bread layers. Just putting them together. And she's gonna smush it down. She's removing the crust. She makes this sandwich with those little crimped edges. All right. So, do you think, survey question, next survey question. Do you think that this cut and seal device infringes the patent that we just went through? There were bread layers, there was food layers, there was crimping. Have they totally done what this patent claims? 26% of you say yes, 70% of you guys say no. Very interesting. All right, let's end the poll and I will show you the answer. Perhaps you guys are on to me now. Was this direct infringement of the patent? Well, this device, it's not a sandwich at all. It's a piece of metal. It's a little device that does things. It doesn't have bread. It's not made of bread. It's not made of edible food middle part. It doesn't have any crimping, right? So this device definitely does not directly infringe the patent. The patent was for a sandwich. The device is something metal. But wait a minute. But wait. It's marketed to customers so that they can make themselves a sealed crustless sandwich. Isn't that enough? Well, it's definitely not direct infringement. And one thing I do want to point out here before I go on to the next slide and answer this question about might it still count? Why didn't the patent attorney write claims to the device? I was showing you guys this patent earlier. They have pictures for the device, but they didn't write any claims for it. So another thing that you should take from this example is don't skimp on who you hire to be your patent attorney, because they might write you claims that seem pretty good. You think what you want to do is make and sell a sandwich. You're a company that makes and sells food products, but you probably also want to keep people from doing it themselves at home, or some company from selling a product to make it themselves. So why didn't they go get that? I don't know. It seems to me that was sort of a failure on the patent attorney's part. But could they get it anyways? Well, that question is really something called contributory infringement. So a party is liable for contributory infringement if they have made a product that essentially is for making something that you have patented. And the specific requirements are, so that party sells the component of the patented invention or material apparatus for practicing the patented process or making the patented item, as here. But there's another component, and that component, the only use of that component, material or apparatus, is in the patented product or in practicing the patented process. In other words, there can't be any other use for this device except to making a sandwich with 2 layers of bread and some edible food in the middle. If we look at the cut and seal marketing material more generally, you can see that they are describing a variety of things that could be made with their device. Not just the crusty sandwich, but also pizza puffs and breakfast sandwiches, both of which, at least in this image, look like they're made with something other than bread. And may, for instance, also not have those different layers that we were talking about earlier that was in dependent claims 4. So essentially, probably this company spent thousands of dollars to get this patent, and then they couldn't actually stop Pampered Chef from selling this device before the patent expired. So the patent's expired now. Everybody can make and use them, these guys. It was filed in 1997, so it expired 20 years later. It expired in 2017. We can all make our own crustless sandwiches now, but before it was, I never saw that that Smucker's sued Pampered Chef. I don't think that they ever did. So why didn't they? Maybe because they didn't think their patent was strong enough. Maybe they could have proved that it was still pretty close to contributory infringement. That's certainly the major use of the device, although probably not the only use. So it would have been a difficult lawsuit. Or maybe they just figured that people who went and made their own crustless sandwiches at home were not the kind of people that were probably going to go out and buy frozen Smucker's Uncrustables anyways, and it wasn't really enough of the lost profits to make it worth the price of a lawsuit. But that is what happened anyways, is that this device kept on going for years and years while the patent was still in force. So that is the story of the Uncrustable sandwich. Now I'm going to give you a little bit more background on patents in general. So there are 3 types of patents that I like to tell people about, the major ones. So the first one is a utility patent. That's the kind of patents that I showed you earlier, the Fender guitar and those other ones that I showed you. And they last for 20 years. And therefore, any really kind of new and useful thing or composition, etc. Then there's something called a design patent. And design patents are not for functional aspects, they're for ornamental only, non-functional aspects of something. And they last for 14 years, but they're much cheaper because they're mostly just pictures. And I'll show you some examples of those in a minute. About 90% of patents are utility patents. That's what we really typically think of as a patent. That's, I think, all of the patents in my company, or almost all of ours are utility patents. But I quite like design patents. I think they're really an interesting alternative, depending on what kind of invention you have. And I'm going to show you some examples of those. And then the third one I like to point out to people is something called a provisional application. Provisional applications don't ever become patents directly, but you can file them with the Patent and Trademark Office, and you can get a number, a provisional application number, which proves that it's sort of official. And then it essentially just holds your place in line for 1 year to give you the opportunity to decide if you want to convert it into a utility application or a real patent application, and proceed with all that is involved in that. And because of that, provisional applications are pretty cheap. They're less than $500. And even actually the filing fees, $260 for large entities, so for companies and such, but it's actually even smaller if you file on your own. So it might be a good option if you're a solo inventor, an individual person, and you think you might have something that you might want to patent later, but you need a year to see if you can get investors interested in your startup or something like that. And actually, my company, we often file provisional applications because our products take so long through the design cycle that we want to see a year later if the idea has actually kind of come closer to fruition, if it were still moving forward in the design cycle with it before we invest the money to file a real one. All right, so here's some examples. This one is a web shooter. This is a utility patent. As you can see, I've kind of highlighted the claim here because I think it's sort of interesting. So it's a toy glove for shooting string foam. And it has a pressurized assembly for transporting that foam stuff. It has a glove, and it has a holder incorporated into the palm for activating that foam and shooting web foam at people. So looks pretty fun to me. This patent was issued in 1991, so it's almost expired. Go do this yourselves in December of this year, I guess. Then there's this Slinky. This patent's quite old. It's definitely expired, but I just think it's kind of cool to see that it was new and useful and interesting enough to get a patent back in the day when it was invented, which is interesting to me since it's really just a big spring. But there's the claim. The toy consisting of a helical spring with this natural frequency at 100 cycles per minute, etc. And here's another utility patent, one of my favorites. This is the patent for the Koosh ball. They called it the generally spherical object with floppy filaments to promote capture. And one little story I like to tell about the Koosh ball is it was invented by a dad who wanted something that would be easier for his kids to catch. And the original Koosh ball that he did as prototype was made with rubber bands, but it became a very, very popular toy. And I think we all probably still enjoy Koosh balls. So those are all patents to things, utility patents where the claim is to some sort of device. So it's kind of similar to the one we went through about the sandwich. You can also claim a method. So this is a way of doing something. This particular patent is a method of swinging a swing, which, by the way, they did eventually cancel all these claims on re-examination and decided that this was just part of the public art. But I think it's interesting for you guys to see it as an example because it sort of makes you understand how a method claim might be written. So in this case, you're suspending a seat to support a user with only 2 chains hung from a tree branch. You're positioning the user on the seat and pacing one direction. And then the user is pulling alternately on one chain or the other to induce side-by-side swinging motion. So this is not the back and forth motion of a typical swing. This is the side-to-side motion that you've probably also done on a swing, but it's a little bit less common. And by the way, this patent was, if you look at it closely enough, if you look it up, you can see that the attorney that wrote this patent has the same last name as the inventor. So it's pretty clear that this dad wrote this patent for his kids, just for fun, probably. But it's an interesting way to understand how you might write a method in a claim format. Another patent that has method claims, although I'm not showing them to you here, is this patent to Mr. Zuckerberg, which was one of the original Facebook patents, which was issued in 2010. And often method claims also have these sort of flowcharts and images like this one does. And I think this patent also has some user interface claims. So interesting, definitely. Facebook has a lot of patents now, but this was one of their first ones. So design patents, a little different. I said before, they're a little cheaper to get. They last a little bit less long, last 14 years. What's a design patent? It covers the non-functional features, as I said before. It's essentially all figures, and it has one claim. And the claim states, just exactly like this, the ornamental design for, and then fill in the blank, as shown. And I'm just going to show you some that I think are kind of cute. So this is the design patent for a Lego man. And you can see they're showing this figure from the front and the back and the side and the top and the bottom. Figure 5 is interesting. You have to sort of put your brain in the right place to see that that's the bottom of a Lego man. But it definitely is. And here's the claim for that. The ornamental design for the toy figure as shown. And that is the one and only claim in this design patent. And you have to look at the figures to understand what exactly it is. And design patents are very specific. You would probably not infringe this design patent, for instance, if you did not have the circles at the back of the legs, like this guy has in this picture. Here's another one I think is interesting. The spork was given a design patent, which is interesting because you use sporks for something. There is a functional purpose to them. But this particular example is for the look of it. So for instance, it could be of any size. there are some interesting design patent stories about, for instance, sandwich bags that look like pumpkins. And then, so they got this design patent for this little bag that looks like a pumpkin. And then another company started making big trash bags that you could put your leaves in, and they would look like big pumpkin in your yard. And that was found to infringe the design patent because there's not a specific size, as long as it looked like a bag and had a jack-o'-lantern face on it, as it did in the figures. It was found to infringe. So this the ornamental design for a combined spoon and fork, as shown. And then this is a slightly more modern, interesting version. You can get design patents for computer icons. And when you do that, you draw a little dashed line around the icon or the image, because it could be put anywhere. So the dashed lines show that it can kind of be attached to anything. So in this case, the image applied to an object, as shown with the dashed lines around it, is what's going on in icon patent, and this one was for Mountain Dew. So the ornamental design, and in this case, they added quite a lot of language to make sure that that was very clear. For a display screen with icon or packaging with surface ornamentation, as shown and described. So those are the basics of patent law, in my opinion, and I hope you found this interesting, and I can take questions. I know I'm just about out of time, I think, but I'd be happy to take a few if you want to stick around.
We invite you all to share your face and unmute yourself if you have a question, please.
For the uncrustless bread patent thing, why didn't they think that the person could chop off the crust of the bread, then combine it with the pie and the ravioli, and then you have the uncrustless thingy-mabob?
You know, so it's interesting, like at what point have you done something novel, and at what point are you just combining bunches of things that exist before? I think it's a hard line there to say. It seems to me that it's pretty obvious to remove the crust. It's not like people haven't removed crusts from sandwiches before, right? But at some point, the examiner said, okay, you've put enough detail into this that I think it's novel enough with all these details to be patentable. But yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of a judgment call, and some patent examiner might think differently than others. So that's something we've certainly seen. Sometimes you take it to appeal if you have a patent examiner that really just says, yeah, I think when you combine all these things, it looks pretty obvious to me, right? And so then you have to go talk to their supervisor, and maybe their supervisor says, yeah, you should add something else in there. Like maybe, I mean, I think claim 9, for instance, the one where it has the peanut butter on both sides and the jelly in the middle, it's getting a little closer to something that's a bit more clever. And that's sometimes why you have those fallback positions, because if you sue somebody, they might send your patent into reexamination, and the reexamining examiner might think that it was obvious, but then you can fall back to your dependent claims and still pursue those for infringement. Good question.
We had a question come up. So no patent lasts forever, or for any invention or innovation?
Yeah, so no, patents only last 20 years. And that's 20 years from filing, and it usually takes several years of arguing with the patent office before you actually get it and can enforce it. So that's the deal you make with the patent office when you submit for a patent. Now, if you want a trademark, trademarks can last forever. They can last as long as you're using them. But trademarks have their own limitations as well. If you want to have a trade secret, you can keep it secret forever. That never expires. But sometimes it's hard to keep things officially secret enough to qualify as a trade secret. But it's a question my company thinks about all the time when we're looking at things. We get invention disclosures, and sometimes we say, maybe this one we just want to keep secret, you know, and we keep it in our trade secret log. And we still we pay our inventors for patents. When we file and when we issue, we give them a monetary award as a bonus. But we also give trade secret trade secrets monetary bonuses as well, because they're all of value to the company. Just depends kind of on maybe how visible it is, or whether we think it's something that would be good to be disclosing to the public for, the benefit of society 20 years from now.
I had a question. You often see patent pending on things. I'm curious what that is and what that means or what it does.
Sure, yeah. So like I was just saying a minute ago, it takes a while to argue with the patent office to get your patent. During that time, you can write patent pending on things. You don't have a patent yet, but you're trying to get one. And what that does is it puts the user, everyone, on notice that you're trying to get a patent. And in fact, patents are published, patent applications are published. So a lot of times you put patent pending and you put the number, and somebody could go and look up what you at least originally asked for and have a fairly good idea of what that is. And then, like in the case of this Uncrustable sandwich thing, right? Let's say Pampered Chef was actually making Uncrustable sandwiches and selling them. When Smucker's got their patent, they could have gone back in time and said, you were on notice because we had put patent pending on something, and so we want damages back from when you should have been aware of it, which was probably at the time that they started selling the sandwiches with patent pending, like written, on the label somewhere. So it's for damages mostly. It's for, money. It's always the answer, right? Money. Yeah.
Another question came up. Doesn't a trade secret make it more vulnerable to copies?
So if you keep a trade secret, like it doesn't have to be absolutely secret, but if you have taken necessary precautions to keep it secret, then if somebody copies it, you can sue them for trade secret misappropriation. But if you don't take reasonable precautions, if you show it to people without, labels on it that says this is a trade secret, if you, maybe don't keep it in a, special password protected, folder or something, then they might argue, no, you actually disclose this to the public. Trade secrets are sort of inherently more vulnerable. Patents are kind of very specific. It's very out there, it's very public. This is what we got, and you can't do this, or if you do, we might sue you. So think about it. If you have a trade secret, I mean, for instance, if somebody independently comes up with the same idea, they can do it, and you can't stop them if you can't prove that they stole it from you. If somebody independently came up with an Uncrustable sandwich, they still can't do it. It doesn't matter that they didn't steal it. Independent creation is not an excuse for patents, for patent infringement, but it is for trade secret misappropriation.
So I have a question, Elizabeth. I know you're familiar with First Robotics, being a first parent. So our students are going to be presenting to judges here in about a month or so. And so they're going to be pitching their innovation project or game design project, or maybe even the design for the robot. So when they present to judges, is that considered the public? You've presented it to the public, and at that point, should they be putting patent pending before they go and send it to judges? Can you give us some insights on that?
So yes, I would say if you are presenting in a form where other people could come, where the public could come, so it's not a private Zoom call or invitation only event, then it probably could be considered a public disclosure. And if you disclose stuff detailed enough that somebody could actually make and use what you've presented, then you may not be able to file a patent on it anymore. Well, that would be the rule in lots of countries. Actually, in the US, you have a year after this public disclosure when you could still file for a patent. So you get a year grace period. If you wanted to file a provisional to save yourself, I mean, that's certainly what we tell our engineers when they go to trade shows or publish papers. If you're going to be going and disclosing this, at this academic conference, at this trade conference, or something, then why don't you send us your slide deck and we'll provisionally file it. And then we can come back in a year and decide whether we want to patent it or not. That being said, as I know I've talked to you about before, Teresa, patents are really expensive. Utility patent costs about $15,000 to get, which is real money. And a patent lawsuit costs about $2.5 to $4 million typically to enforce. So, why are you getting the patent? Are you just getting the patent to have a gold seal document to hang on your wall, to write in your obituary? Lots of people put their patent numbers in obituaries. I mean, it definitely proves you're smart, but is it worth $15,000 to you to prove you're smart? Can you get your sense of self-worth some other way?
I wonder about students wanting to, have some sort of file patent on their college application, that could be priceless for that individual.
It could. And that, from that perspective, that, I have a pre-college child myself, and it's certainly something that, that has crossed my mind as a patent attorney. And I personally think from that perspective, if you wanted to, go get a patent it yourself book off of Amazon and file a provisional patent yourself, you can certainly do that. You don't have to have an attorney. You can upload those documents yourself. As a provisional patent, put it on your college application. I got this provisional patent. Here's the title. Of course, nobody can read it. It's secret. It never publishes. But you could even provide a copy of it, I suppose, if you wanted. And it does get a U.S. official number. It doesn't technically mean anything. The patent hasn't been looked at by the patent office, but probably college admissions don't know that, right? So maybe it is worth something to say, I put this all together and I filed it with the patent office, and it's good for a year, and maybe that's all you need for your college application. So, but should you go and actually file it, like pursue it longer term than that? Only if you have a fair amount of money that you don't have a better use for, and maybe a patent attorney that will do the writing of it for free, because a lot of that cost is in patent attorney fees. So if you have a patent attorney friend, then it's not as expensive. It's still thousands of dollars though, just for the filing fees.
Someone asked why it costs so much, but it sounds like a good portion of that is getting good legal jargon in it.
It's really hard to write an actually useful patent yourself. I mean, you pretty much have to hire a patent attorney, and even hiring a patent attorney, like Smucker's probably found out, it depends on how good the patent attorney really is, if you want to enforce it, right? There are some companies are more doing like arms races with each other. They aren't really like suing each other all the time. The way, it depends on the industry, right? And another reason somebody, a small startup might want to get patents so that they can prove to investors, especially once they get it, that they have an idea that went through the rigorous process of getting patented. And you can't just get a patent on anything. You have to do this negotiation back and forth with the patent office. But David, even on the fee side, just the government side, I mean, the Patent and Trademark Office is a revenue center for the government. So they're not a cost center. They do more than make up the cost of their own employees, more than make up. And then getting a good patent attorney is not super cheap either. Partly because, and this is just good for all students to know, right? Because there aren't quite as many patent attorneys as there are as a need for patent attorneys. So it's supply and demand, right? So.
Another question came up, how many names can be put on a patent as creators?
So there is no limit. Let me tell you, it really irritates me when I get applications that have like 15 names, because then we have to get 15 signatures and it's just irritating. So it's more typical for there to be 3 to 4. So every inventor has to have contributed to an aspect of the invention that is claimed. And just being in the room when you guys talked about it doesn't quite get you there, officially. So it should really be the inventor who came up with the idea. So for instance, if you work in a lab and the major professor, for instance, like comes up with the idea and has the details of how the lab is gonna test something, and then you are the lab techie and you do what the major professor came up with, and then there are results, it's very possible that the only inventor on that is the major professor. Now, if during the process of running the test, you come up with some ideas and tweak it a little bit, and talk to the major professor and he says, oh, that's a good idea, and then you make those tweaks, then maybe you're both inventors. But it depends on the situation. So it's not merely doing what you were told is not enough to make you an inventor, even if you're part of the team.
Another good question here. Can you sell your patent to another company during the 20 years?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So that's something I deal with a lot, actually, is we acquire smaller companies, and then they assign their patents to us as we kind of absorb those companies. Or sometimes we acquire patents that other companies are trying to get rid of. Somewhat recently, actually, we got some patents that we jointly filed with another company when we were working on some projects together. And then they were thinking about getting acquired by someone else. And that someone else said, we don't want you to have these jointly filed patents with KLA. And so they sold them to us.
Interesting.
But yeah, and if you have a startup, another reason you have this patent and you want to prove it to inventors, to investors, to show that there's value. But if your startup, goes bust or something, the patents in and of themselves usually have value, and you may be able to sell them separately. But yeah, a lot of times patents change hands quite a few times. You can see that if you go look at a patent ownership record.
But it doesn't change the period. The 20 years is 20 years from start to finish, no matter how many times it's changed hands.
Yep. Yep. And the US assumes that the patent is owned by the inventor until the inventor assigns it to usually their employer. And that's not exactly true in all countries, but that's how it is in the US. Although most big companies, that's part of your employment agreement, that you agree to assign all inventions to your employer. And that's something that, for instance, we are working on getting those assignments in place before we actually file. But sometimes we have issues, like a project I was just working on last week. We acquired a little company. The very first patents that they ever filed, they never got around to actually assigning that paperwork. And so now we're like, oh geez, can we find these guys? It was 12 years ago. Where are they? And they assigned it to the name before that company changed names, before we bought them, so it gets complicated.
Gets messy pretty quick. Awesome. Looks like all the questions in the chat.
I don't think so. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you had fun. And I certainly enjoyed myself. So much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know we've all learned a lot, even adults, and I see a lot of mentors on the call here, as well as students. And we appreciate you taking this time. And thank you again.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.